about the existence of Supreme Person, and I just thought this was there was just religiosity and no God. So anyway, I just didn't connect. And so by high school time, I just stopped going. And I went to college at Colorado State University and started in 1968, and only spent a couple years there till I lost interest, and I was just not an academic person at that time. I was skiing and climbing the mountains and doing everything else. And like a year or so later, I actually saw devotees. I started seeing devotees once on the campus there. This old round-backed Ford van came, and all these shaved-headed persons piled out. They were probably, it came to do Harinam Sankirtan probably. And I was like, oh, who are these? Are they some Buddhists or something? And then once in Boulder, which was an hour and a half away, we were down there at one point driving, and on the hill in Boulder right beside the university, the devotees were on the street doing Sankirtan. And they had a poster on a pole. On one side it was Gopal Krishna and the cow, and the other side it was a picture of Srila Prabhupada. And the person I was with, they just pointed immediately and said, yeah, and that's their God. It was just this picture. I was like, oh, wow. So just impressions. And then I ended up in the summer of, or fall of 1971, I left Fort Collins. Everything had Krishna had started taking things away. This is why I don't know how I came, but it's like some unknown mercy of Lord Chaitanya and our dear friend the Super Soul, seeing that we had nothing going in our life, and somehow or other he makes arrangements for us to meet devotees. So I had left college because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was kind of wasting my time and money. And I got myself, by a little trick, out of the draft. They wanted to take me to the Vietnam War, but I got out of that. My girlfriend ran away with some other girlfriends, and I was kind of traumatized. So I was like, oh my God, what do we do now? So I put my pack on my back and took my best friend, was a dog, and we hitchhiked all the way to San Francisco. And as soon as I got there, in the park I met somebody who was visiting the temple and becoming a devotee. But I went and I stayed with a high school friend whose family lived right in San Francisco. Father was a doctor, and they were happy to have me for a while. But everywhere I went in San Francisco, I would see devotees. Golden Gate Park, big group of devotees doing Sankirtan, just walking around in circle, happy, mothers with babies. And then going to the health food store, I'd see them in the street, arms with those big oversized Krishna books. And I would say to them, uh-oh, and I'd walk to the other side of the street and avoid them. It's funny how we would try to avoid, but Krishna is always plotting how we can connect. And then I just stayed there over the winter, went back to Colorado the next spring, still not knowing what to do. I had some friends and I had stored some of my belongings in this place, Fort Collins. And I said, all right, I'm just going to go hiking in the mountains for the summer and, think about things and see what I should do. So I kept coming and going from the mountains. And I don't know how I was living. I had no money. I had no job. I think I was getting some food stamps somehow. But, and then one time I came out and I called this friend in San Francisco. They had just joined the temple. And they preached to me very heavily. You should go to the temple, meet the devotees. What are you doing? You're just going to keep going around in circles, get another girlfriend, be bewildered. If you don't become a devotee, we just won't even be able to be friends. I just thought, this person was one of my only friends in the world. And so I just did what I was told and dropped my pack and left my dog with somebody, and I hitchhiked into Denver and went to the temple. Spent 5 days there. I think I gave the last few dollars I had for Bhagavad Gita and some japa beats and just went to the brahmachari ashram, slept on the floor, got up at 4 a.m. and started chanting 16 rounds a day. Leaning against the wall, trying to stay awake. I was not accustomed to it. Anyway, I know I felt some shelter, but I wasn't, it was really new for me. I had been thinking that, philosophically, that I'm a soul. I'm going to go on when this body is finished, carried by my good works, bad works. And I wanted to live the best way I could. I think I had become a vegetarian, and so by the time I went to the temple, I was really strictly into it. And so I knew this was an important thing, but my mind was unsettled. I hadn't seen my family on the East Coast for 2 years, even communicated. So I did a little work, got a plane ticket, and flew back there. And it was sweet and sour, and I was 21 years old and quite fanatical, so I wouldn't even sit at the dinner table and eat with them because they, and of course they took it personally, and so it was kind of uncomfortable being there. But I think a week after I got there, I got a phone call from my friends in San Francisco, and they said, they knew I was there, somehow or other they found out, and they said, go to the temple in Boston, make some friends with the devotees. It was still like this pushing, and now I see how Krishna was just pushing. And the more I think about it, the more I think it's very wonderful, because I don't know what qualification we had to deserve it. Anyway, I borrowed my father's car and drove into Boston, or there was a train I could take also. So I started going once a week, then twice a week, and I became addicted to prasadam, and started, relishing the kirtan. And the more I went, I started going evening program, Bhagavad Gita class. So I started really picking up on the philosophy. And finally, after about a month and a half, I was really struggling, because I had this kind of like, I had my attachments, and I was unsure if I went. I didn't want to go and leave. So finally I made the decision. I told my father, I'm going to live with these devotees at the temple in Boston. And he went, I don't know, I don't think this is for you. And I just said, well, I have to try it. I'm going to make the experiment. So I had my father drop me off with all my possessions, and or whatever little possessions I had. And that was kind of the, I never went away. It was a very nice situation where I had really wonderful association, 24 brahmacharis, and all really different types, some really intelligent people that come from universities, and some really simple people that I was like wondering why they were there. But I could just see everyone was really struggling to take up the process. And so it was encouraging. And I even thought then, it was even a struggle for me a little bit, throwing myself into the sadhana. But I said, only by this association of devotees am I doing this. That was a fact. It was really, and some really nice advanced devotees who were, a couple of whom are still now sannyasis. So it was really.
So after 18 years you married Prabhuji?
Excuse me?
1971 you went to temple after 18
It was,
years?
it was February of 73 that I actually joined.
Even 16 years.
And then I bounced around from Boston. I left at one point and joined, there's a traveling party, Radha Damodar party, all buses with Gaurnitai deities. All my friends, and one of them was the temple president from Boston. He was given charge of one bus. And then all the brahmacharis ran and joined him. And some householder came to be the temple president, and I was like, I couldn't relate so well. And so I visited that bus once, and they made an arrangement to meet me in Boston, and I just kind of went AWOL from them.
When did you first serve Prabhupada?
First time, 1975. I joined in 73, so 75, I think, a Rath Yatra festival in Philadelphia. And then the next summer, we went to New Vrindavan. We were on the traveling bus party. A couple buses went there. Prabhupada was there. You can see some of the videos now. Prabhupada sitting in the yard. It's just grass area, and he's talking. So just saw him a couple times there. I was kept very busy, and I was worshiping Gaur-Nitai. And actually, one morning, I was bathing and dressing Gaur-Nitai right on the altar with Radha Vrindavan Chandra at a different place, their old temple, which is now demolished. And we were very excited, of course. Prabhupada was there, and we were thinking, okay, when the curtains open, he's going to come, and he's going to see all the deities, and I dressed the deity, and Prabhupada would be there. So I finished and went out just before deity greeting time, and nobody was there. And I asked somebody, one of the pujaris, isn't Prabhupada coming? Where are the devotees? He said, oh, he's up at the old Vrindavan farm with the brahmacharis this morning. And I said, how do we get there? He said, well, you go down the road 100 yards, and then up this dirt road, it's called the Agasura Road. And it was really like Agasura. So I grabbed my bead bag, put my shoes on, and I started running, because it was, it was morning program time. And it must have been half mile, 3/4 mile, but the road went like this, and potholes and everything, and I was running and huffing and puffing, and I got into this field, and I saw the farmhouse, old farmhouse, where the brahmacharis and Radhanath Swami used to be there. And I heard this kirtan going, and all of a sudden the doors opened, and Prabhupada and some other, and his servants walked out, and I just fell down flat, and they came right out, kind of close to where I was, jumped in a jeep and drove past me and back down the road. So I feel like that was my kind of life with trying to connect with Srila Prabhupada. I'd always just miss him. New Vrindavan, yeah, very little. I sat in an initiation ceremony, New Vrindavan. And then a month later, we went to New York, and that was the first Rath Yatra festival on Fifth Avenue in New York. Big affair, big victory for the Krishna consciousness movement, and Prabhupada was so happy. I hardly saw him because I was helping. We drove in from traveling, and they just grabbed all the brahmacharis to help with arranging everything in the morning. And I don't even remember sitting in Prabhupada's class. And but we saw him in the parade and heard him speak afterwards. And then I stayed on this Radha Damodar party. And then the next year, a big group of us went to India. It was my first time, 1977, in Mayapur festival in March for Gaur Purnima. And Srila Prabhupada was there. He was getting very ill at that time, so he gave just 2 classes, and then he hardly was on the scene. I went once and sat in his room. But it was very wonderful to see him and be around him. And I got a little bit closer maybe than this. And after class, he would just have everyone just chant Hare Krishna. And he would get up, and all the devotees would do kirtan, and Prabhupada would come from the Vyasasan down to the temple, and he'd circumambulate Radha Madhava. And then, did you ever see the one before that was the bigger temple? Anyway, just a small deity room, as big as maybe this room, and you could walk all around it, just like now. But on either side, they had the bells. You've seen that? They have a bell on either side of the altar out front, and Prabhupada would go up, take a quick darshan with the deities, then he'd start walking in one direction, and he'd ring the bell, this big bell, and all the devotees would get very excited and start jumping up high. And then we'd follow Prabhupada around through like a narrow hallway. And sometimes a couple times got really close. And it was just like, you're just kind of floating in the air. And many people say this when you got close to Srila Prabhupada. It was just this blissful and cooling, and you just felt the ecstasy coming from this person. You know, it's just like somebody else, another godbrother said, Prabhupada. So Prabhupada would order something wonderful to happen, and it was just like the Lord's internal potency would descend. You know, it's like Prabhupada could create totally super mundane things all the time. And he did with us also. I didn't even take initiation in front of Prabhupada. We would write a letter, because in 1973, I was initiated in September, and devotees would just write a letter, because Prabhupada was traveling so much, and everybody would be inviting him, and he wouldn't. He couldn't come to half his invited temples. And so we'd write a letter. I mean, the temple president would write a letter, and I guess we'd write something to the temple president. Anyway, he'd send a letter. Our letter went from Boston to London, where Prabhupada was, and then the letter would come back in 2 or 3 weeks, and all right, you may, signed by Srila Prabhupada, written by his secretary, and you may initiate so-and-so, his name is this. Please do a fire sacrifice in my name, and distribute prasadam. So, Prabhupada's potency, And some people who spent time, many of us, even, I know Ganapati Swami was like that too. He got initiation at a distance. And then, so some devotees that were with Prabhupada a lot, they're not around anymore. And some of us that didn't have much close association were still trying to do some full-time service. So it was a very transcendental arrangement.
I met so many Prabhupada's disciples, and they always tell this like superhuman things. Like Prabhupada was walking, like while he walks, it seems like he's walking on the air. And when people come close to Srila Prabhupada, it's kind of that, as you mentioned, such blissful, pleasureful vibrations around all that space. So, you may be the 20th or 30th one who tells the exact same words.
So you have to believe it.
Yes.
It's a believe it or not story. Some people said that Prabhupada would walk on the ground and, it'd be like a dirt path, and you couldn't see any footprints. Anyway, he said, someone asked, can you show any magic, any mystical? And he would stop and he would say, he'd point to all his disciples, this is my magic. They were absorbed in all sinful activities, meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, all these things. And now they are just addicted to hearing and chanting the names of the Lord. They lost all their interest. So this is my magic.
Was it Niranjan Maharaj who was the temple president in Boston while you were there?
No. He was a humble devotee. We would go on traveling Sankirtan together. And he was funny, Niranjana Maharaj. He used to say he wouldn't sleep at night when we were traveling because he was very, he didn't like going out and approaching people on book distribution. And he'd be in anxiety, and sometimes, some nights he wouldn't even sleep. But anyway, we had a nice time. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah. When did you meet them?
I met her the first, it was spring or summer of '85. I was always traveling, but somehow or other I went and met the devotees because I knew about this weekly program. Mitra Sena was my friend, Ganapati Swami was an old friend. I was on his bus party at one point, and I went there once for the program, and we had kirtan and prasadam. I think it was outside, maybe summer. I don't know. So, I mean, I saw who she was, I met her. Then she came to Chicago Temple, you know, small group of devotees, so everybody knew each other. And she was going out every day on book distribution. Really determined person. I used to see her running out with a box of books in her hand, she and her other lady partner. So, anyway, another Krishna arrangement. Someone asked me, the temple president asked me, I said, you know, we have a damsel in distress, and she's looking at you. I went, oh, who's that? He told me. I said, oh, I had been brahmachari for 15 years. It's another kind of conditioning to be a brahmachari, wearing the orange cloth. So I said, oh, I don't know. I said, can you give me 2 weeks to think about it? So I had to go through a lot of thinking. It was one of my most difficult 2 weeks. Anyway, I said, anyway, I think my friend who was the temple president, he gave me a little of her history and convinced me, and I knew she was a good devotee, so. I said, okay. He said, all right, well, don't worry, no commitment. You can just, in a very simple way, associate for 1 year with no, what's the word? No.
Obligation.
What's that?
Obligation?
Yeah, no obligation, no commitment. And I said, okay, I'll try, see if it works out. Okay. Enough history for now.
Now it's time for dinner.
We have a lot of food.
No,
here.
yeah. Wait, one thing, Prabhu and Mataji, even though you might had a tough time when you're youngsters with your parents, but we would like to thank your parents for beautiful souls for us.
Yeah, we prayed for that our parents get some mercy. We heard that's what happens if we continue on our path. Okay. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki. Shri Krishna Janmashtami ki.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Please have